June 3rd, 2007, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church gathers to celebrate 45 years of God's goodness to this beloved congregation. Dr. Marcus D. Cosby, 2.5 years into his pastorate, announced to the church his vision for building a new worship space. With the congregation's rapid growth resulting in multiple worship services and overflow spaces, the need was obvious. Consequently, he asked each household to pledge $4,500 in honor of the 45th church anniversary and preparation of the construction of the new worship center.
So my vision was for a spacious edifice that would allow us as a family, a growing family, to have all the amenities of a 21st century church. I wanted us to be able to come together and have worship in a space that was conducive for our growing needs. And when we cast the vision, we were only at 3 services. Beyond the vision casting, we went to 4 services. And so I knew we were going to need somewhere that would accommodate all that we were trying to do as a church family. We wanted to make sure our children had some space where they could grow and thrive and have fun while they learn about Jesus. And we wanted our youth to have space. At that time, our youth minister, Dr. Josh Mitchell, he conceived of a space that would allow youth to have worship and fellowship opportunities. So we knew we had to do that in a space that was large enough for all of that, but in a space that was likewise placed in an area where we were landlocked. And unfortunately, we are landlocked because of the geography of this area, but we had to find a way by which we could do all of that.
We're grateful that we have the opportunity to give. But if you've been here for a while, you noticed that today was a little different. For most Sundays, I make 4 requests: the tithe, the offering, missions, and mercy. And then there's a 4th request that I often make of you as we give each Sunday. That's usually for the debt elimination of this very building in which we worship. Well, if you were listening, if you were paying attention, if you noticed it, you noticed I only asked for 3 gifts today. I only asked for... I love this church. I love this church.
And since 1962, Wheeler Avenue continues to do great things for the glory of God.
That said, it's official, we're debt free.
The little church that began in a living room with 13 people has remained a testament to how God honors the faithfulness of his people.
God
let's talk about the first committee meeting. Take us back to that time. Paint the scene. When was it? Where was it?
I guess I'm the only one in here that was at the first committee meeting. During the first committee meeting, the pastor called. The key people he had decided that he needed on the committee. And he just gave us an overview of his vision and the things he thought that the church could accomplish. And being a man of faith, his idea was to build the cathedral. And then from there, we talked about building for 5,000 and everything else. We talked about it around the table at that time. How big would it be? And we just got some ideas from that and moved on. Actually, I've been involved, as Reverend AJ knows, with every building on this campus, from the little white building to where we are, except for the last one they built for the First Touch Ministry. So, I'm really a person of faith, and I have hope about everything. So I always go to Isaiah 40, 26 through 31. There is hope in me. And then I go to Psalms 121. And with faith, anything is accomplished. It can be. And following Reverend Lawson, I learned a lot in this church and how things can get done. And then Reverend Cosby came and followed. He was going in the same steps. And so I'm not surprised at anything this church does. Nothing. Because if this church looks forward in the future to do something, it will be done. God has blessed this church. In Sunday school, we talk about the fact that there's always a future. We may not be here to see it. That's why I don't get it all upset about Trump and the rest of this stuff. Because God takes care of him. He has. I remember when he was born. I remember when he was brought up in this church. And God puts the right people in the right place for this church to prosper. You know, I thank him for Reverend AJ. I just look at him and think, I knew his grandfather, by the way. That's why I talk about Sunday school. I was in Sunday school with his grandfather. And God has blessed us. He really, really has. So I don't know why, and I don't care why. All I know is all we can do is stay within the faith that Reverend Lawson started and Reverend Cosby is continuing. That's where I saw that.
I think it was the kind of the amalgamation of a whole bunch of people who had a lot of faith and the favor of the Lord that has gotten us to this point. I was not present for the first building committee meeting. I think I was still in seminary, and the year after is when I graduated seminary. I became full-time staff associate pastor for worship and ministry at the time, and I had no involvement on paper per my job description with the building committee, but they were meeting in the fellowship hall at the time, and I stuck my nose in because I'm nosy. And the rest is history. I became fairly intimately involved in it. And again, we had tremendous leadership from our chairs of the building committee, first with Deacon Terrence Fontaine, Brother Milton Scott, and then later with Deaconess Angela Joubert coming on to really spearhead the fundraising effort. There was a fundraising subcommittee of the building committee at first, which did a good job of getting us launched and setting a great foundation. Renee Logans and Thomas Jones gave leadership to that effort. And once Angela came on, Deaconess Joubert came on, it just went berserk is the wrong word, right?
I'm shocked.
Yeah. No, but it went to higher heights. And I think the way the church never stopped contributing to the effort. even when we took a pause with our plans to ensure that Pastor's vision could fully be made manifest, the church continued to give and put us in a position where we weren't looking to start the project with a loan. We started with cash, and a considerable amount. We paid for the parking lot with cash. I think that was $3 million project. And then we were able to cover soft costs, architectural fees and project management fees and surveys and all these studies we had to do to launch. We paid for all of that with cash. And then, the genius of Jeff Powell and Eric Mullins to find the right lending institution. I think they went through maybe 20 different banks, and we looked at doing bonds, and we looked at how we were going to fund this, and they found Amity, and they had I remember the meeting where they came in and presented the terms to the pastor, and it was like gold.
That's awesome.
And they opened it up and like, and these are the covenants, and it was just a great. It was like, okay, so it's a no-brainer, and we went from there. But the church never stopped giving, and the church has continued to put all of the vision of the pastor. They positioned it in such a way that it just couldn't fail. With the support of the congregation and the favor of the Lord, there was no way this was fail.
December 28, 2025, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church gathers to celebrate the fact that the $55 million debt on the cathedral and Christian education complex has been retired. It was supposed to take 25 years. Instead, it took only 5 years. But it didn't just happen. It took great faith, some trial and error, and the commitment of the congregation and the committee to accomplish what we can now celebrate in this glorious moment.
I can remember as though it was yesterday when the pastor decided that he wanted to, let's just think about this for a moment, make sure that we're building the right facility for the right reason, and that we have sufficient funds. I said, oh no, I think he's talking to me. That took my, oh yes, I'll be happy to do that too. Oh my gosh, what's that new number going to be? And that's what I remember most about all of it, that I came on during a time when we were transitioning to even bigger and better facility than I was accustomed to seeing pictures of, in the past. And I said, oh, Angie, this is going to be a lot more money than you were thinking about, as though it was yesterday. And it certainly was, but what a joy. It really was a joy. I was pleased to be asked, if you can imagine that, to be asked to do that job. And the team that I was blessed with, knew more about it than I, because they had preceded me in that first phase of fundraising. But I tell you, when I was thinking through this discussion, the part that I remembered most of all, and I'm pretty sure you were there, was when the architect was presenting to us his new design. And this is after the pastor had come forward and says, I think I'm ready, let's do this. And all of a sudden we went from, and this is from a finance perspective, the beauty was there, but all I could see was more money, more money, more money, more money. I took on with this, and now is this. But what a joy it was, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Being in that meeting with Phil Freelon, the #1 architect in the world, to me, and certainly the number one African American architect, came to visit us on our land, on our ground. And I was smiling this morning as I thought about this, because I remembered the question that I asked him. I only asked one. And his response was so precise. The building is a unique building. And I use a term, I won't even use it here. It's just a descriptive term, but it wasn't, the term that he was looking for. And so I said something to him about wanting it to be more open. Okay, I'll use the term. Wanting it to be more open and less penitent. Oh my gosh, I have never used that word again in my life. And if you remember it, he said, well, I mean, he physically got into the conversation, and after he finished talking, I said, I'll never say another word in any of these meetings. And he said, well, I did have some other things in mind, and he kept going, and I think of that every time I walk into that atrium, because the last thing you think about is anything being, closed in. And he talked to us about how the new facility would be open, to the existing facility. And there isn't a day that I walk through the atrium that I don't think about that, And I was thinking, this is going to be a lot easier to fundraise than I thought, because it was just so special. It really, really was.
My name's Paulette Frederick. I am the manager of budget and finance. In terms of this project, we've been talking about the need to build a new building. I don't think I was in the initial meetings, but as the determination was made that Milton Scott would chair the committee and then lead the way in terms of the capital campaign and raising money for the building, I remember the first big meeting that I attended was down in the fellowship hall of the Christian Life Center. And there was just a room full of us, and it was exciting to know that we were getting ready to start this endeavor. And honestly, it was humbling to recognize that I was a part of this, because knowing that God was doing something, it was amazing.
So my journey in this whole building process started in November of 2013. It was an evening where the pastor called and said, we've had a few iterations of trying to get this project off the ground and build a new sanctuary. At the time, we didn't call it a cathedral. And he says, look, I really would like for you to work with Milton Scott in order to get this project going. What do you think? You have any comments? And this is just something I think that you should be a chairman of, a co-chair with Milton. Milton and I knew each other very well. We were the part of the same fraternity. And I always respected his acumen. And obviously his wife, we all know each other, been going to church here. And so it wasn't a stretch for me to be able to accept the mission. And obviously my love for the pastor made it easy. And so that's how I started in November of 2013. And we kicked off by trying to formulate a formidable team that could work together. We formulated subcommittees that we knew that would be instrumental in making this happen. We were really thinking it would be a 3 or 4 year project and we'd be out of here. And that didn't happen. And that leads me into this next comment. Milton and I made it a promise that we would really try and make this happen fairly quickly, because we were worried about Reverend Lawson. And we wanted to get the now cathedral built before something happened with Reverend Lawson.
Whenever you first cast the vision, what conversations you had, if you can recall any that stuck with you?
So I tell it all the time, the Milton Scott story. That's the biggest conversation um, that is always replaying in my head. And the only one I can really remember. Milton Scott, I asked for $4,500 per family. And Milton Scott, who was very um, well off financially, came to my office and said, Pastor, that's just not right. It's not right for me to give $4,500 when a school teacher has to struggle to do it. I'd never forget that was the exact example he used. A school teacher may have to struggle to do it, and it's very easy for me to do it. And that expanded my understanding of the realities of the membership of our congregation that we have. And I'm grateful that we have everyone all through the socioeconomic strata who are part of this congregation. And the ones who were able to do so much more did. And the ones who were able to sacrifice to do it, they did. And that's what church is all about. That those who have the wherewithal to do what others cannot have, they go a little farther. Those who have to sacrifice to do it, they do what they can to do in installments what they have vowed to do. And so many people did that. And so that's the conversation that will always linger in my mind. And his commitment to the work. Once he made that meeting with me, had that meeting with me, I told him, well, now you're going to be the chair of the building committee. If you come to me like that, you got to have some ability that I don't have. And I recognized that. That was good for me. That I recognized in him what I did not have in myself personally. So he was able to get with Terrence Fontaine, whom he recruited, and eventually Angela Joubert, Deaconess Joubert, Deacon Fontaine, and the three of them made it happen. One of the things I quickly recognized as pastor, I can't do it all. I don't even know how to do it all. Even with pastoral responsibilities, I'm a strong preacher. I get that. I'm a strong teacher. I get that. I'm a people person. I get that. But there are other areas of the ministry that are not my strong suits. And so I've been able to surround myself with people who have made Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church what she is in this season. Our founder, he was an amazing administrator. He did it. I mean, he was in the office early in the morning. He left in the early evening. That's not my ministry. And I had to understand that I'm not Pastor Lawson. And a lot of people also had to understand I'm not Pastor Lawson. I do things differently than he, but our differences does not equate to deficiency. And so we had to realize after this transition of pastors that this second guy is different from the first, but God had placed him here. And so he must have something to offer. And we've had the benefit of watching God do great things with a different kind of guy, but a guy who's still divinely deputized to make the work happen.
When you go to a bank and you're talking to the team that's going to be financing a church, it's a totally different team. And their metrics are different, kind of their key indicators are different. They approach it differently. So we had to come up to speed with how banks look at churches as opposed to the more traditional, industrialized type financings that they do. So that was a little bit of a learning curve for us. And we got there, as we started talking to these banks and asking them how they would structure it, asking them what they needed to see, what kind of due diligence would they do. We kind of learned it over time and found out how to best represent the church in terms of their process that they had to go through.
There were a number of more complex issues that played a part into this. We have to give props to Deacon Eric Mullins, he was the one, he and I think a team, did a lot of meeting with bankers, trying to get the most favorable loan favorable loan commitment for Wheeler. You know, when churches, nonprofits go to the banking community, you know, we're not looking in a very favorable light, you know. So he did a lot of work to talk to bankers, and he talked to, you know, we used to bank with Bank of America, but they didn't want to give us the terms that we felt like we needed, because we wanted to have the flexibility of time, but if we wanted to pay it off early, we could. And he had worked with Amegy, and they were willing to give us the most favorable terms. And then he also worked with the loan department, and we bought what's called a swap agreement. Our loan had a interest rate, but it was flexible and variable, I should say. And it would move based on LIBOR at the time. I don't want to get into a whole bunch of complex stuff. But he worked to buy this financial instrument that would somewhat protect the church in terms of the interest rate that we paid. So effectively, by buying that swap, our interest rate settled in at a little over 5%. He can tell you all the complexities of it, but that was a part of what helped us protect the church in terms of not being susceptible to interest rate fluctuations. So that was good.
One thing we did do in structuring the loan is we had a 25-year amortization, which helped to keep the payments low. Most of the banks, though, that pitched us offered just a 10 or 15-year term. So you had a 25-year amortization, but you had in 10 years, you're going to have to refinance. And the risk associated with that is we didn't know what the giving was going to be like. And if you can't refinance, then you have a problem. So we were asking for not only a 25-year amortization, but a 25-year term, which was kind of unheard of. And out of the 6 banks I think that we talked to, only one gave us that term that we wanted, and that was Amegy Bank. And the protection that gives you is you don't have to worry about in 10 years or 15 years refinancing that loan. The loan's in place, it's going to be in place for 25 years, and you got a low payment, and so you're protected in that way. So we were really just trying to protect the church. And as it turned out, we didn't need 25 years, clearly, which is wonderful. But at the time, we just didn't know.
Periodically, I go through this process to try to run the numbers to see how close could we get. And I think it was last year, along with talking to Sherry, I said, you know, if we budget like this, I can get us done by the end of church year 26. I think that's what, and so he looked at the numbers and we talked it through. And so that's what we proposed to the trustees. And then one day we were sitting in church, and Pastor Cosby said that if we continue as we are, we can get the church paid by December, by the end of this year. And I'm like, oh my God, he just shortened the period for me. And I said, well, okay, we're gonna try to see if we can do that. So we ran the numbers to see what we would have to do to get there. And trustees agreed, and we decided we just gonna keep paying it. If God brings it to us, we'll pay it. And so we got there.
Progress was being made. Committees were established, ground had been broken, and prayer cards were laid into the foundation of the new building. But something that no one saw coming was a global pandemic that would shift the world as we knew it.
In the past 2 weeks, the number of cases of COVID-19 outside China has increased 13-fold. In the days and weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know.
You're in touch with all these people? 17 that are in
COVID-19 was undoubtedly a period of loss, isolation, and hardship. But glory be to God, it was not all bad. While there was great distress during those years, we witnessed God work all things together in astonishing ways as we praised our way through the pause.
Let's not forget the pandemic.
Oh God, yes.
Oh my.
It was, I mean,
A blessing.
it was a blessing.
It was a blessing.
Sitting through those construction meetings, if you will recall, they had figured everything out except for how they were going to construct the drive path between this cathedral and the sanctuary, because they knew every Sunday it had to be, they had to repair it and so we had a blessing in disguise, and it wasn't even much of a disguise, because the way they were able to complete the project as a consequence of not having to worry about every Sunday, recalibrating themselves and reconstructing a temporary drive path. That's just one small material way by which the pandemic was a blessing, but this is not intended to be braggadocious at all. Well, I'm bragging on the church, but it's still the favor of God. Absolutely. The giving continued in a pandemic.
Exactly.
It absolutely did, which was just amazing. I think, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me here? And it's very easy, Andrew. You just keep going. And I was shocked. I mean, pleasantly shocked.
We all were.
But wasn't that something?
Yeah.
People continued to give, and some gave even more. They just shifted their funds around and gave what they hadn't given before. I was overwhelmed. Every time we gave those presentations, every period, and we had to show those numbers, I just knew my pandemic numbers were going to be miserable. Yeah. They were not.
We got fortunate in that right when we started construction, COVID hit. And so the church had to adjust, and there weren't as many people on campus. And that really gave the construction teams a lot of leeway to do some things faster and more efficiently than every Sunday having to back away and kind of create space for everybody. So that was a real plus for the whole process. Worked out really well.
Every time we had a pause, God intervened.
Yeah.
Even the way we got freedom, God was in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say this church is blessed, because everything we ever need or needed, we had it in this church. Mm-hmm. Now, I give thanks and praise for the membership.
Absolutely.
Because you see, whatever we need, God has somebody already positioned in Wheeler to take that on. I look at Reverend David Moore.
Yeah.
When we met an obstacle, it was to us an obstacle, but God had already solved it. And here, I told Reverend AJ, I had somebody in mind, and then he told me, well, we got a preacher. And I thought, well, who is he talking about, a preacher? But when he told me Reverend David, I said, oh my goodness.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Moore, Reverend David Moore. I've been a member involved with Wheeler Avenue since 1971. I went on and became an engineer and worked in engineering for all my career. And as I prepared to retire from engineering, I asked Pastor Cosby if he was interested in my help. I had retired as director of engineering for a school district. And he asked me if I wanted a job. I told him no, I didn't want a job. I'm ready to retire. And then I come to church one Sunday, and my name is David, and he's preaching about David wanted to build a house for God. And while he was preaching, I believe I heard God speak to my heart and say, help them build my church. That was in 2018. The church project had already begun. Contractors had been awarded, and we were moving forward into decisions about the final construction documents. And I was able to plug in and had 25 years of construction experience to the project. My background is electronics. I've worked in networking, I've worked in electrical systems, I know power. So I was able to bring to the table a number of different disciplines related to project and construction work, and had been involved in the building of a number of facilities between Harris County Hospital District at the time, and Baylor College of Medicine, Memorial Hermann Hospital, and finally with Fort Bend ISD school system, we had built at least 7 to 10 buildings while I was there. So I was open, thinking I would just help. Next thing I know, I'm interviewing, and pastor said, I thought you didn't want a job. I said I didn't, but a preacher preached a message that I believe God spoke to my heart, and I'm here, and the rest is history.
The favor of God, how he orchestrates things, how he brings people together for their unique purposes. And if you allow him to use you, then he will use that that gift that he's blessed you with to be able to do those things. I'll share that once Angela became the chair of the finance committee, as she had, that is when I was truly dedicated to my giving. It sparked that energy about giving and my commitment. And that, along with the marketing, is what really turned the tables for me and my family. We're going to make this commitment. We're going to sacrifice. We're going to give. And then coming on as chairman in 2018, it was just before COVID. So I was the one responsible for getting the deacons in place and having to make sure everyone could get into worship safely, get them out in a timely fashion, be concerned with whether or not we had to shut the campus down or switch this route to go somewhere else. And I was able to give input to that as we made plans for how we route all of our members to get them into church, because if rainy days happen, certain areas that you could walk on were no longer approachable. So we had to reroute and redirect folk. So it taught a lot of organization for me personally, and just becoming a new chairman, leading a new team of people who had been led by someone else for a long time. It took effort. So it taught me that, and to just be committed to what needed to be done so that the entire process could continue without us being the bottleneck of getting the worshipers, so that the present part of those P's would make sure we could make sure that they would be here and be present, and to continue to give and be committed. So that message had to constantly be given to the deacons so that they as leaders could continue to give and demonstrate with leadership were committed to that building process. And I learned a lot about the building process, all of those details that go into it, even some of the minute things you may not think of. Sometimes that is the spark that helps something else move along. And just to witness how he grew in that process. As he said, he peeked in because he was nosy, but I literally watched him grow in how he ended up managing the whole project. So that in itself was a lesson, that if you really dedicate yourself to something, then you can become maybe not an expert, but you can add to what the benefit is. So that I learned a lot in the process.
Being intentionally intergenerational has been the decades-long reality of WABC. This reality was reflected in the plans for a space that would accommodate believers in their pursuit of Christian education. And it happened in all stages along the journey: seasoned saints, middle-agers, young and emerging adults, and especially the youth, children and babies. After all, we were building for the future.
I think it was around 2015 we kind of paused our efforts because the design was complete, but the funding was such that we would have started with the worship facility and had no expansion for children at the time. And it was a secondary project, and pastor just couldn't wrap his mind around not building for the children and youth at the same time as we built for big church, right?
Right.
And that providential pause, that moment of recalibration was one that is ironic, because we, in this design, have our Christian education complex where we house our children and our youth, and that facility was paid for before the cathedral was paid for. So I mean, it's just the way God operates to favor the church because of, you know, the pastor hearing from God to say, let's make sure we take care of the children first. It was supposed to be a shell,
Right.
That's right.
and
That's right.
the money just kept coming in such a way that Amegy was going to give us another $10 million loan.
Yeah.
Amegy was going to give us another $10 million loan to complete the CEC, which ended up costing $8 million for the build out. And we paid for that in cash.
Wasn't that
Well,
good?
you
Wasn't that
see-
wonderful? Great.
The best thing that we had going for the project was that in the early stages of it, as we kicked off, there was a beautiful effort for funding, working with Amegy Bank and, you know, guys like Terrence Fontaine and Omar Reed and the entire building committee, Eric Mullins and those guys. We were able to pull the funding together to keep the project rolling. And I've always said, if a project got money, it'll flow. So we were able to keep the project moving. We started the construction, we started the cathedral site, and then we built the shell that was a CEC. And lo and behold, the building committee looked up and we had money to build out the CEC. The plans was to only build the cathedral, and then maybe a year or two later, we build out the CEC. By the grace of God, funds were available for us to continue with the CEC. We kept moving. We built through the entire project. We started and broke ground in 2019, and we completed the work in 2021. We actually had what was considered a certificate of occupancy in 2022.
Through it all, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church has remained a beacon of light in the Third Ward community, across the nation and around the world, committed to worshiping Jesus Christ and ministering to the total person. May we never forget that we are truly blessed to be a blessing.
You have to have a shepherd that's putting this before them, not browbeat, but to talk through how God is blessing us. I mean, it's evident in what in what we do here on campus, for them to be able to see ministry, to be a part of it, to recognize that each week we're helping people pay rent, we're helping people keep their lights and utilities on, to give to others, even as we try to do for ourselves in building this building. We still have to take care of the public. Scholarships for kids, like the dedication, all of the money that we gave to the nonprofits, those we have to keep giving to others. During COVID, when what was it? On Thursdays or Fridays, we'd go out to the different locations and give away, trying to help the community. So as long as we're doing ministry, I think God understands. And so if we're faithful with the little, He'll give us more. And I think we've done that. And we've had a leader in place who believes that and always is telling us that if we give, God's going to give back. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And so He's been faithful to that.
What's the narrative for those who may not be members? The narrative is they're not just thinking of themselves, right? They're giving to, I think it was 20 different entities, got some money. So, and even beyond just the big splash of it all, every day, this church is giving, and I think that is because of the heart of our pastor. I will not soon forget when he got us all together during Hurricane Harvey's response, and questions were raised as to whether we should stop individuals from coming in day after day, getting more resources. And he said, just give it away. We're here to show the lavish love of Jesus Christ. That was his language. Just give it away. And we've been just giving stuff away ever since.
I know.
The building was complete. The triumphal entry had taken place, and the Wheeler family settled into their new normal as the pandemic came to a close, and worship services and ministry operations were now in full swing.
I felt like we were close, and the Amity drafts the account on a monthly basis. They take their account out. So I had worked up the numbers. I made an extra payment, and I said, I think we should be there. And so November, they typically pull it around the first few days of the month. And so like the 2nd or 3rd of November or something like that, I'm like, I think we're here. So I called Annette Wynn, who is our banker, our loan officer, and I said, I just want to confirm with you that we're paid off, we're done. She said, yes, you are. And I was like, oh my God. I got to text Pastor Cosby. So I texted him and let him know it's official, because I know I'd done the math, but I wanted somebody at Amity to tell me we're clear. And she said, yep. And she was congratulating us and saying, this is amazing. I'm like, yes, it is. We're there. So I texted him, and I didn't text anybody else. I texted him to let him know we're there. We're done. It's over. Shut her down.
I was out of town. I don't know exactly where I was. I was on the East Coast. It was 4:53 p.m. I'll never forget the time. But it was 3:53 here in Houston. But it was 4:53 wherever I was, and I just hollered. I don't know if I, one of those. Not one of those. I was like, yes, it's done. Her text, I think it was on the screen that Sunday, was woohoo. So she was hollering via text. Dr. AJ had the same text sent to him. So all of us were just rejoicing. We knew it was coming, but we didn't know it was going to be that day. And so to have it on that day in November, when we were planning for it to be concluded in December, even that made a whole lot of difference to us. So it was just amazing to have the feeling of woosah. That's a throwback, but to know that it was it's over, it's done. And we did it. We did it. There's a joke in my head now. We did it, Joe. But I don't know. But we did it. And to know that we did it made this pastor, who was already a proud pastor, even more proud. Here's the Chief Operating Officer of Amity Bank. She's come to be with us today. Thank you, Madam Chief Operating Officer. And she's seated with Deacon Trustee Eric Mullins, who partnered with our staff to make it happen. The trustees of our church did it. We did it together. We did it together.
From casting to completion, from vision to victory, God has prospered us through it all, allowing this Black Baptist church on the corner of Wheeler and Scott to continue to shine the light of Jesus Christ as we seek to accomplish His will in all the earth. To God be the glory for the great things He has done, is doing, and continues to do in the life of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. This is indeed the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes.
the most important thing to me, that we take care of this place. As a congregation as well. You see something going on in this congregation, like somebody bringing food and drinks stuff into the cathedral. No, we don't do that here at Wheeler. We just want to make sure we spend a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of effort getting it the way it is, trying to keep it that way. So.
I'm going to urge that you will recognize the burden that God is laying on the shoulders of this young man. There are some pastors who understand what this means. For him to take over Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church after some old man has messed it up for 42 years, got a lot of cleaning up to do. But praise God for this first family. Thank you all so much. God bless you. God bless you.
I see a church that we'll have to keep becoming. We have become something that our founder and those charter members never thought we would become. I take great joy in talking to the charter members and hearing their delight at what they see after 63 years, remembering what they saw in the first years. So I take great delight that they are excited about the church continuing to expand and become. And so I want us to continue to see where God is taking us. We are at a point again where we have grown so much that we don't really know what to do. But we believe that God is making ways and God's going to provide. And we have our worship space now. We just have to figure out how to use it to the best of our ability to accommodate all of our people.